All right, we are back. Long time no stream here. Um, yeah, so I got busy with holidays and then had a few work related and personal things that were taking quite a bit of attention. But, now I'm getting back into the routine a little more and I think I can resume streaming. I do suspect that this year, going forward, I'll probably stream, I don't know, like probably between every 2 or 3 weeks, or I don't know. I want to give myself a little space to stream a little less because I'm just becoming more busy. But I think the streaming has been valuable to me and hopefully valuable to whoever tunes into these things. So I do want to keep it going as long as I can find it sustainable. So expect a slightly less aggressive but still regular schedule for this. Um, yeah, so where to start here? I basically have two things I want to do today. I'm also just giving myself permission to ease into this a little bit and not go too crazy in this first one. But two things I want to go over. So one is I'm just going to continue working on the smart contract for Strong Pool, the decentralized Arweave mining pool I've been working on for a while. When I get to that, I'll go over what I'm doing on that. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about, and I think this is where I'll start, is wikis on Arweave. So it would be bad if I talked about this and didn't talk about what's out there now. So there's an existing Arweave wiki. Oh no, I better load. Oof. That would be an oof if I tried to load it here and it didn't load. Let me just make sure. Is other stuff loading? Internets seem fine. All right. Well, pretend that wiki loaded and it's awesome. There's another Arweave wiki which is not what I'm talking about. It's cool. It's more like a Wikipedia style wiki, where there's a consensus view of the world. So like everyone's editing the same wiki. I'm going to talk about sort of a different conception of what a wiki is, and talk about why I think it's an interesting thing to build on Arweave. I want to acknowledge the pre-existing work of that other wiki. It's the RWiki wiki. Right, it's not loading right now for whatever reason. Who knows why exactly? Don't want to dig into it on the stream. But there's good work there. It's a cool wiki. But I think there are some other kinds of wikis you could build on Arweave, which would be super cool. And I've actually done a little bit of work on this. I think this is going to remain sort of a side/toy project for me, though who knows, maybe it'll evolve into something bigger over time. But I think one of the best ways to make ideas real in people's minds, even if you're not going to be the one fully pushing them forward, is to just build something that shows it. So I've done a little bit of that. I'll probably continue to do more here and there. All right, so preamble there. What am I talking about? So the original wiki was made by Ward Cunningham way back, and it was this kind of experiment in creating a site that anyone who had a login for the site could just edit. And very interesting experiment. Actually, I should have gotten this up, but the C2 wiki, I think this was the original one. It looked different in its original format, but this is the kind of content that it was very bare bones. It's written in Perl, just traditional web app, some Perl scripts on a server. But what was novel about it was this thing that anyone could edit very easily and just create this hypertext system. It had this notion of like wiki words. Oof, I don't like some of like the current incarnation of it, but all the content's still here, and that's the thing that's important. Anywho, so the things were anyone could edit it very easily, low friction editing. Everyone was sharing this editing space, and you could very easily like link things together and just create this, this kind of web of knowledge. But everyone was sharing the same one. So that was Ward's original wiki. He made that super cool concept. We've gotten a ton of value out of it as a society. Wikipedia being maybe the premier example of it. But later, he revisited this idea, and he wanted to play around with the notion of how consensus happens in a wiki. So, and you see this in Wikipedia, the shared view of the world can have some challenges over time. You know, you'll get like edit wars on Wikipedia pages. People have to come to agreement on what the content of the page should be. And that is good in the sense that what you end up getting is often sort of an amalgam of a lot of different viewpoints, but it also means that certain viewpoints just never really come out. And for some of those, that's probably good. They're probably just crazy fringe viewpoints. But sometimes you're probably also missing out on some really interesting takes on things, or at least a different perspective on them. So later he came along and said, okay, I want to try a different experiment. And he created this thing called Federated Wiki. And what I'm looking at here is the FedWiki site. So this is the Federated Wiki. And you can go, I guess that one doesn't go anywhere. So this is a different view of what a wiki should be. It's, where should I start explaining this? Well, first of all, the interface is different, but don't focus on that too much. You can think of like each of these things tiling across here as a separate page. But you know, you could be like full screen going to different pages. So don't get too hung up on the interface. There's a lot of sort of interesting interface experiments happening here as well. But the important thing about this wiki is, unlike Wikipedia and most of the other wikis that are out there, it's not a consensus view. In this model, everyone has their own wiki, and then you can fork people's wiki pages. So if I'm on this wiki and I have my own, I'm not going to actually demonstrate this part. I might in a future video and then just clip that out and have it somewhere. But you can just Google for Federated Wiki, and Ward did like all kinds of videos on this back in the day. And I should say this concept itself, I think the original wiki dates from like the 90s. This, I think it was like 2012 maybe that he started work on this experiment, and it's ongoing, but it's a little bit like some things about the code are a little dated, but whatever, it works, right? So anyway, the model with this wiki is everyone has their own wiki, and each person who has a wiki can go fork other people's wiki pages. So if you made some content I think is really interesting, but I want to sort of remix it and make my own take on it, I can fork your wiki page, do that on my wiki, and then that itself is another wiki page that people can fork. I think that's a very interesting model for how we collect knowledge and share knowledge. And in some ways, well, I wouldn't say it's better. I think it's a very complementary model to the sort of consensus view. And, you know, there's other views too, like news organizations. You could say those aren't consensus views. They're more like editorialized views. I think all these models are useful to have existing together. Okay. So that's hopefully explaining a little bit of what Federated Wiki is. Let me just do a quick check of my audio. Yeah, okay, looks good. I haven't done this in like over a month, so I'm a little rusty on my tooling here. All right, so that's Federated Wiki. So how do I think this relates to Arweave? So this FedWiki here, this is the actual Federated Wiki out there. I have created this FedR Wiki, Arweave for R for Arweave. Very, I don't know, hopefully enjoyable pun there. Enjoyable to me, but anyway, moving on. So I think there's really interesting things you could do with this on top of Arweave. First of all, I guess I should talk a little bit about why I think the original FedWiki here didn't take off. All federated services that don't have a sort of like self-supporting platform built in have this problem of someone has to run the thing, and no one, Moxie Marlinspike, he did a post recently talking about Web3 stuff and pointing out like no one wants to run servers, and I just dismiss all people who disagree with that. Like, it's true, no one wants to run servers, and if you think it's not true, it's you're insufficiently busy or something. I don't know. there's some minority of people that do run servers because they think it's cool. I'm one of those people, but like it's not a normal thing to do, and most people are not going to run servers. So if you have something like Federated Wiki that requires people to run servers, it's probably not going to happen. You need some sort of self-sustaining incentive mechanism, or at least like a community of service providers. But for whatever reason, the service providers never materialize. There's probably not a clear business model there. But I think you can potentially fix that with Arweave. So the thing I have here, there's still a server involved, but all the data for it ends up getting stored on Arweave. So that puts you in an interesting position of eventually you could move this thing to a point where there's no server. I do not view that personally as like a immediate goal that someone needs to do. I think it's fine to have servers as long as the data is there and you can recover the data. But ultimately, for it to live a long time, you probably do want to get rid of the servers. So that would fix the underlying, no one wants to run servers problem. You treat the Arweave ecosystem and platform itself as a server, and then you run the wiki client side directly off of that. So you could potentially fix the problem with people needing to run things to keep this federated service alive. So that's one thing you could do with this on Arweave. And, again, like I said, this is going to be kind of a side project for me. I'll just piddle around with it when I feel motivated. But, maybe someone will watch this and get really motivated by this idea and build their own version of this, and that would be great. Please go ahead. I'm not going to squat on this idea. I would love it, actually, if someone else took some of this and ran with it, and that's why I'm talking about it. So that's one thing, right? Like, I think you can solve the people running servers problem that happens with federated services this way. The other thing I think is really interesting to think about is the incentive mechanism you can build on this. So if the core thing about federated wikis is everyone has their own that they kind of own, and then you can copy other people's content. So the content's like all open source licensed or Creative Commons licensed, and you can copy it. You could potentially reward people when they copy content. So like if you put out, I think a couple good examples of this are like a recipe or a diet plan or something like that. Something where people want to use the content but probably modify it. You could make the copying actually send some tokens to the person who originally produced the content, and maybe even do that transitively. I mean, I think there's some work you need to do to really make that scalable and work well, but if you have a page that's forked from another page, from another page, from another page, you could potentially reward people proportionally in that whole chain. And so you could get a really neat thing where, if someone makes, I don't know, the best enchilada recipe in the world or whatever, and it gets copied everywhere, that person could actually make a ton of money from that. Like all things, I don't think that's a panacea. The rewards are always going to be kind of like a power law. But I think that's a pretty cool idea. And I would contrast that with another idea that I see out there, which I'm actually kind of afraid of, which is rewarding people directly for attention. I don't want to say, I think that's going to happen whether we like it or not. So we just have to deal with it and sort of live in that world. But directly attaching monetary rewards to attention is kind of a scary thing to me, because you think people behave poorly on social media now. Well, what if everyone has a monetary incentive to grab eyeballs with their content? Right now, I don't really I don't directly capture money from these videos, nor do I directly capture money from my tweets. I kind of indirectly get these reputational effects, but there's some checks and balances there too. I'm trying to cultivate a particular persona that I think is going to get me the kind of interactions I want through this stuff. But if all of a sudden everyone has direct monetary rewards associated with their attention that they derive, I worry it's going to kind of weaponize people's interactions even more than they are now, and people are going to do increasingly extreme things to garner attention if everyone gets that monetary reward by default. So I'm kind of scared about what the implications of that are. I think we'll sort through it and figure out how to deal with it. But I would like there to be other alternatives. And I think this rewarding for copying feels like a more, it has less perverse incentives with it. Like there's certainly some, right? Like you could get people pirating content that they are then getting other people to copy. But ultimately someone's going to copy something because they find it valuable. And that feels better to me as a reward mechanism than I'm getting rewarded for the amount of attention my stuff gets, because attention does not necessarily mean value. Like my scrolling of Twitter is probably net negative to me more often than I would like to admit. Like I'm not someone who thinks that social media is just bad. I actually think there's a ton of good stuff about it, but there's certainly this sort of cycle you can get yourself into that's sort of like an addictive cycle with just seeking out novelty all the time. And I would like us to build incentive mechanisms that are alternatives to that. And this copying mechanism where people are rewarded for producing content that other people copy, I think could be a really interesting way to do that. And you could think about this too in a lot of other domains. So you could extend this well past the wiki. Like I think a really cool place to see this would also be like 3D models for 3D printing, because that's another area where a lot of times people will make something and then other people want to modify it because they like have like a little bit of a different use case for it. It would be super cool if, you know, everyone in that tree of modifications was getting some rewards for that. And again, like I think Arweave is a kind of cool piece of infrastructure to build some of that on, because you can put the content itself on Arweave, and that helps you have stronger attribution of like who created the original content. And of course you're always going to be fighting like leechers who are going to just go download the thing for free. But I actually think a lot of people, I think we've seen this with streaming, right? Like, yeah, people have gotten better with detecting BitTorrent and all that, and so there's more stick as well as carrot. But a lot of the reason people use streaming services is just because they're way more convenient. And I think the same would be true of this kind of thing too. Like, people are not going to subvert systems for a few pennies here and there, for the most part. They'll just use the convenient thing that is also participating in this, nice reward-based economy. Well, at least that's my hypothesis, and I think it's probably true. I think that's borne out in other patterns we see. So, hopefully that makes the idea clear. This is something I've planned on just fiddling with over time. I'm still kind of figuring out where I'm going to use it myself. So I think this says like test stuff on it. Yeah, it's just like test stuff. I have one for myself. I'll probably put things on this I want to write about. I also have one for Strongpool. I'm still thinking through how I want to use it, because one of the downsides of this approach is if other people want to contribute to my wiki, there's not really a good built-in mechanism for doing that. And certainly I could build one, but I probably don't have enough time to build that myself. So I'm not sure how it will fit in with the mining pool stuff. I could use it for some documentation, and I may, but it also kind of means it may be harder for people to contribute to that. And I definitely want to get community participation in the pool documentation over time. But yeah, that's something I'll experiment with and probably will show up in future videos. If I like start digging into the Arweave protocol and making videos about that, I might put some of that content on, my Fedar wiki here. All right, so that's that idea. I hope that is interesting and inspires some people. If you're someone who wants to work on this yourself, either like building something that's derived from these ideas, or even just like you want to do this exact thing, like you want to make the federated wiki on Arweave your thing, like feel free to hit me up, and I'm happy to chat about it. I think you'd probably have to cross a pretty high bar to get me to give up the domain, but I would be happy if someone just made a competing one, and I would be totally cool with that. So like, don't let it stop you that I've done this already from taking it on yourself. I would be really happy with that, because there's only so many hours in a day, and I have to choose where I'm putting my time. And I don't think this is the thing I should be making my top focus right now. But it was fun to do, and I'm hopefully just having it out there get some gears turning in people's heads. I really want the whole tools for thought space to do some of this stuff too. Because you could imagine doing the same thing with like individual pieces of information in something like a roam graph. You know, you could have rewards flowing up across that whole stream. Tons of complexity in doing that, but I think that would be a very interesting place to land eventually. Alrighty, so that's the wiki portion of this. And I think I'm gonna go for about an hour today. I think that's tentatively what I do. So I'll go to 1. The other thing is, let's get into the contract. Do some nice contract work today and get back into that live coding. Yeah, so just a reminder what we're doing here. So I'm doing the distributed mining pool. The core mechanism of the pool is you have a smart contract where people are going to stake pool tokens, and if they do not redistribute any block rewards they get, their pool tokens will get slashed. So that's the mechanism that forces people in a distributed pool to redistribute their stake of the pool. Because otherwise you don't have something at stake. You know, you could just steal from the pool and be like, haha, I got a block, and like you can kick the person out, but then you still don't have the block and they haven't paid any penalty. Yeah, so that's the mechanism. With that, there's some subtlety of, if you want people to be able to unstake at any point, but you want a time delay. And I do not want that implemented in such a way that people have to like restake for a locked up period of time over and over again. So you could have it so that you just have people restake their tokens. So like, I'm gonna stake it for 14 days, and you know, on day 11 or whatever, towards the end, you have to stake for another 14 days. Because you always need like 3 days or whatever to let people have time to distribute their tokens. So that would be bad because it would be a transaction for every time you restake. Instead, what I want to do, and have implemented part of, is you stake your tokens, and then at any point you can unstake, but they're staked indefinitely until you unstake. And when you unstake, they are unlocked a fixed number of blocks in the future. So you can't unstake in the middle of a mining round and then instantly make off, because like what you could do is just wait for your block, unstake, make off with it, right, before you get slashed. So no, you have to unstake, you wait for a period, and then you get your tokens back. And while you're waiting, you could get slashed if you are cheating the pool. So that's why I started working on the way that works. I should get the tests up here so you can see. This is what the contract state looks like. And by the way, this ticker will probably change, but that's a convenient ticker for tests. But so your balances end up looking like this, where you have your wallet address. And by the way, I did not actually know this. I think it's just a JavaScript construct at this point. But if you want to have a key that is set via a variable in an object, this is how you do it. You put it in, you know, braces, and then inside the braces you put the variable name, and that turns into, it's like an interpolation basically for object keys. So the balance is, okay, the wallet address and then heights. And what the height says is, after this height you get this many tokens. So this person is that's a lot of tokens. Does that make sense? I guess so. Yeah. It's probably just multiplying the divisibility by the size. Anyway, distracting myself there. So this says you're basically starting with this many tokens. And this says after block, or on block 3, you know, block of height 3, you're going to have this many more tokens added. So your current balance is the sum of the balances of all heights less than the current height. And so when someone stakes and then unlocks, you know, their balance shows up here, n blocks into the future, where n blocks is however many you want to lock them up. So like, let's say, you know, we stake here, then unstake. I'll just say this is 4 and this is 5. These are the heights. And then we'll say unlock wait period equals what, like 5 blocks, right? So that means we get added here 10. I don't know how many we staked. We'll just say it's another 10, right? So unstake 10. So you unstake here, and in the future, you're going to get this many. Hopefully it makes sense. Let me check too. I should see if there's any questions. Nope. Nope. Anyone watching? One playback, so I don't know. Maybe. It's always hard for me to tell. I feel like this does not accurately reflect the number of people who are watching, because I know sometimes people are, but I don't know. Some of the vagaries of YouTube still confuse me. We'll leave that comment there. Okay, so that's the concept we're dealing with. I'm sort of partway through implementing this. I also did a bunch of, I assume probably no one remembers exactly where this code was. I extracted a bunch of common code and put it into functions here at the end of my contract. Just kind of dry things up, and I figure repetition is just more places to mess up the code. So as much as I can extract things and put them in places that I can then unit test potentially, that's good, just like always in any code. So yeah, so the things that are working is this transfer will transfer, but it's just hacked, right? It's just going to transfer from that 0 balance. The balance function that returns the current balance is basically correct. So what it's going to do, it's going to call this get available balance function, which is going to say, okay, do we have balances for the caller? If we do, which this may be redundant, but I haven't tested it. So put do is if redundant. Always a little, I think in Clojure, this would just nil pawn away. It wouldn't be a big deal. In JavaScript, I'm not entirely sure what it does here. Also, this might be a better way to write this loop, but let me keep going. So I think I could do object, well, whatever. I think there's a better way to write the loop. But anyway, we're going to loop over the heights and the quantities up to the current height. And I should explain why these are strings. I'll come back to that. So we're going to parse the current height, or the height in the object, and as long as it's less than or equal to the current height that we're at, we're going to add that to the available balance. And if not, this I should take out, I think. I will take that out because I don't think we can guarantee. That was from when it was an array, and we cannot guarantee that we are going to go over those in the order that they are numerically. So I don't want to break there. Going back to that, why is it, you could do this as an array too, but I realized if you do this as an array, you end up with a sparse array, and when you loop over it, you just get a bunch of undefines for the keys that don't exist. Which is fine, but you're looping over way more stuff than you need to. So instead, I made this an object, and that means you're not going to be guaranteed to the order of these, and you have to parse them as strings, turn them into numbers, but you're not going to be looping over way more stuff. Which could matter. I have to think how much that matters. I don't know, it could become pretty inefficient. Like if someone just staked stuff right at the beginning, and then like a year later they unstake, that's going to be a lot of junk in that array that you have to loop over. So I definitely think this is the right way to go, but it does make the code a little uglier in the sense that you don't know the order in which you're going to go over those keys, and the height keys are not integers, so you have to turn them into integers whenever you use them. So this part is basically working. And what I want to do now is get rid of some of these hacks. So I was thinking, objects that we're using for balances could get pretty messy too. So if you get a lot of unstaking and staking going, you might end up with just a bunch of stuff in this object. Lots of height keys and amounts, and some of them might be 0. So what I think I want to do is whenever you interact with this to add or remove balances, consolidate all the pending balance into the balance at the current height. So basically, say we do something here at 4. I'll just do it this way actually. Do something at height 4. What we should end up with is I guess I need to make this more than do something. So we'll say stake 10, right? So that's just going to take this balance here that we added, or whatever. The balance that's coming out of the total, it's going to go into the staked balance. So what you should get on the other side of this, in the balances, we also have a staked balances, but in this balance, we should get, actually, let me copy this. We'll get this, right? So I want to take all the balances that were there in heights less than the current height and consolidate it all into the current height. So that simplifies the logic of adding and subtracting balances, and it cleans up this object for us so we don't get this really gnarly state that has all this junk in it. It should kind of self-clean as people interact with it and never get too giant. So that should end up being a consolidate balances function. And what we can do is, let me comment this out. So I'll just leave this code in here but comment it out. So the first part I'll leave this to do. So the actual act of modifying the balance should just look like this, where we do balances, and I gotta go look this up because I don't remember. So Arweave block height. And we gotta like toString that, right? I don't know. We'll see in the test here if I got this right. So oof. Arweave block height. toString, like so. Okay. So we assume that coming into this part of the code, we have already consolidated the balance, and our entire current available balance is the number at the current height. So now let's write the function to consolidate the balance, and then we'll go look at our tests and see if we got all this right. And one thing I need to figure out is how to unit test these individual functions, but I think I will not get into that this time. We'll just sort of integration test it to some degree. All right, and which function? Well, it doesn't really matter. I guess I was in the stake function. Let me go back. So I'll take this. I'm going to do this into the transfer, because that's the one I have a test written for. So let me do this one up here. So we'll do transfer like so. Oops. Bloop, 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 bloop. And I'll put this back for now. Okay, and the balance is minus equals quantity. Yeah, we'll just, I'll leave that there. Come back to that when we get there. Okay, so what does our consolidate look like? I think I'll code it in line here, and then we can extract it into a function. So, oops, or I should do it above, right? Because that's where it needs to run. Okay, so consolidate. Let's grab this guy, because it's basically going to be this. Actually, gotta think about this. So, if we know the available balance, yeah, so let's implement it this way. If I've already calculated the available balance to check and see if the user has enough tokens. So all you really need to do is loop over this if you already know the available balance. Let's see, balance is address, so this would be the caller, right? We're transferring from the caller to the target, and we won't need this value. All we need to do here is say oh, how do you delete object entry JavaScript? What's the, oh, delete, right. Yeah, so just so if I do A1, B, just making sure I have my own JavaScript understanding. Remember, I mostly write closure scripts, so delete. I'll just say this. So if we were to delete A, what do we get? Yeah, fine, good. Okay, so we want to go through balances. Did I delete the, oh, I want that if. Okay. So as long as our balance is less than or equal to, or I'm sorry, as long as our height, the height that we're looking at in our balances is less than or equal to the current height, we're just going to go through here, because remember, we already know the current balance. So we'll just go through here and say the caller, right. Balances caller I'll just oh no, I don't need to, I was thinking I need to reparse it, but no, I don't need to reparse it because it's a string in there. By the way, I'm probably going to go through, I think I do want semicolons in here. The code I was sort of basing this on originally didn't have semicolons, but I'm mostly following putting semicolons in TypeScript and JavaScript, so I think that's the folks I'm mostly collaborating with. I think that's what they're doing too. So okay, where are we at here? Just checking, everything's looking good. Yep, good, no comments. Okay, so let's delete from the balances at that height. So once we do this, we just cleaned up all the heights. We already calculated the available balance, and all we do here is set this, and we should put an else. I don't know if this to do is redundant. I'll think about that, or I'm sorry, if the if is redundant, I'll think about that later. But we need to make sure that balances, we need to make sure this is an object. Okay, so it's an object, and we can make sure that that's that, and then we do height equals available oof. All right, available balance, and then we're going to subtract the quantity from that. So we've cleared out everything. Just we're going to reset the height, or the balance at the current height to the available balance, so we already calculated, and then we'll subtract the quantity from that. And then the next step will be to extract this. We may end up with some redundant calculation of the available balance. I gotta think about that. Think how we want to do that. Okay, does this look good? Yes, I think so. So we're going to clear everything out, and we're going to set the available balance, and then after that we'll subtract the quantity. And the other thing we want to do Yeah, so we still need to increment the call of the target as well. So if target imbalances, and so we want to, how should we do this? Because we don't know. Oh, this could actually, we can't do this, right? What we need to do, right, because there could already be a balance at this height, so we don't just want to set it to the available balance. Is that true? I say that, and no, because that would always have the available balance. I was thinking like, okay, if they stake and unstake, they could have a balance that's just becoming available now, but we would have already included that in the available balance. But we do need to be aware of that in the transfer. But maybe we want to do the same thing on the target side too and consolidate their balances. I think we do. Right? So I'm going to leave the target for now, and I think we can come back to the target after we've... we can come back to the target after we've extracted this code into a function and just apply the same function on the target side. Okay, let's run this and see. I guess I already have a terminal open there. So I would expect that this test is going to fail right now because I think it has not. Maybe I'm just I guess that implies I'm not sufficiently testing this because I think what I'm doing here. Oh, interesting. Fascinating. So I'm calling get balance, and I guess it's all working out okay because get balance. Let's get the state. Yeah, what's the call for that? So state. I might need to go look at Arweave for this. I just want to see what the entire contract state is. State. Let's see. Okay, so Arweave contract, contract write interaction. Mine contract dot. Oops. Contract dot. View state. What does that get us? Return the view it states write interact. What happens if I just log console? I want to view the entire contract state. Yeah, okay, so it is in there. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's in the state key. Okay, so let's do this. State. See what that gets me. Do. Does this make sense? What height would we be at here? Mine, bloop, bloop. So you mine there, mine there. I think it does, right? Because we haven't gotten to block 3 yet, and we're seeing our consolidated balance in 2. The one thing that's not quite right is, just because we haven't written it yet, is we're not seeing that one consolidated into 2. So that one should end up in 2 as well. So I think we're doing the right thing. What we could do to test this a little more is do 2 more mines. No, just 1 more mine, right? So this should fail because we'll have more tokens than we expect. But it should end up consolidated. Oh. All right. So wait a second. So what's going wrong in this one? Because what we should end up with is everything consolidated into 3. Why are we not ending up with that? How is that failing? Oh, no. It's because, okay, it does make sense. So in order for that to, I need to mine up here. So if we mine here, we should end up with everything consolidated into 3. Clearly I need to write some better tests for the specific examples, but for streaming purposes here. Yeah, okay, so cool. That looks right. Of course our test is failing because I didn't change what I'm expecting, but we're seeing the failure that we would expect. Okay. So, yeah, let's go ahead and extract this. Alrighty. Is this redundant? Is it? Let me think about this. I'm just trying to think through. Would we ever end up? I don't think we can here. It might if we extract it, though. I don't know if we can guarantee that. I think we need to leave that in. Okay, so let's take this. And we'll go down here and we'll make a new function. Well, yeah. Let's paste that. Take this guy. Oops. I guess I pasted that inside the function. Take this. Call this. Call that consolidate balance. And okay, so I do not think this is redundant actually, because you can't know. Oof, I'm still ending up pasting this inside, aren't I? Yeah, let me get. Boop. Does that fix it? I think so. Okay. I don't think this is redundant because you can't know. Oh, that's the wrong. I need to put address there, right? And this needs to. Oof, doing some bad copy pasta here. Oops. Uh-oh. Did I toggle the... Nope. Still okay. Sorry. I thought I toggled the mode on my mic. Okay. So, yeah, that's not redundant because we can't really know whether or not a balance exists for the address. So we do want to keep that because we don't really know how that's being called, if it's being called on the caller or not. And this one, well, let's get rid of that because that was copy paste stuff. This should be address, so we want to keep that. And so in this situation, I think what we want to do we want to total this up as we're going. And not rely on anyone passing in a balance for us. So we'll just say, do this. Okay, I need to put that back, QTY. So we're going to total up the available balance as we go. And no, this is not redundant in this case. And also delete it. So we're keeping a running total and we're deleting each one as we get there. And at the end, we'll do what we did up above. I not copy that? Here. So we want to do, we want to get a caller. Where? Ooh, sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Those would be, use all with address, not caller. That's a sneaky one because that's in the, I'm declaring these functions within a function, and caller is declared outside the function. So it's easy to sneak that in when you're copy pasting and get the wrong thing. Okay, so address. Okay, so do we check to see if that exists? If it exists, we're going to loop over it. I should make a to-do for myself because I think we can do, let me look that up. So, nah, never mind. Sorry, that's not worth it. This the way this loop is structured is just a legacy from how I was doing things with the array, and I think there's probably a better way to write that to do better loop structure, but I don't want to forget it. Okay, so I'm gonna loop over the array. We're gonna do the parse int. We're gonna add the available quantity to our running total, or the quantity to the running total available quantity. We're gonna delete it, and then at the end we're gonna come in here and assign the balance for the address at the current height, or assign the available quantity, available balance to the balance for the address at the current height. Sounds right when I say it out loud. The one thing that's a little bit redundant, we'll use this in cases where we've already come up with the available balance for checking purposes, but we also don't know if that's happened. So we'll do a little bit of redundant addition. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Like maybe later I come up with a way to remove that. And again, since the paradigm for SmartWeave is that the clients execute the smart contracts, so you don't have to be quite as mindful of efficiency as you would be in a situation where all the nodes in the network are executing it. I expect over time that will change a little bit, and that I think we'll end up with a roll-up like model where trusted nodes execute these things, and then you have some sort of fraud proof that you can use to call it into question. But that's not happening yet. But I think it probably will in the future. So, okay. Okay, so we just need to use that thing up here. So we can take this out and just do consolidate balance. And we'll do it here first, and then we'll do it on the other side. So we're going to consolidate the balance of the caller. And that should let us get rid of this and get rid of all of this. Right? We'll find out if that's true. Think. Nice. So it works. So now we should be able to take this same thing and do consolidate, and actually we'll clean up this code too. Consolidate balance of the target. What did I type wrong there? Not that an O. Consolidate balance of the target, and then at the end of that, all we do is this. Oops. Okay. There we go. So that is what we want to see. So we are consolidating the balance for, well, we're not really consolidating it, but we're putting the balance in at the correct height for the target of our transfer. Okay, so hitting the hour here. I think it's probably a pretty good stopping place. I'll just have some thoughts on what we'll do next. And I don't know, I may actually do this again next week, because as long as I'm working on this smart contract, this is something I need to do anyway, and it doesn't really add much drag for me to stream it. So I may just stream all this stuff. We'll see. Maybe I will end up doing every week, as long as I have something to stream about. I guess let me know on Twitter if anyone's actually listened to this and really wants me to do it one way or another. I think the trade-off is, if I stream every week, you're going to get streams that are more just me coding, which I know some people enjoy that. So I don't know, it's useful for me, and I'm happy to do it. And maybe fewer streams of me talking about things. So I guess if you have a preference for that one way or another, and you're actually listening to this, either while I'm doing it or afterwards, let me know on Twitter. I would appreciate interaction on these things, and curious to hear what people get out of it. Okay, so this is actually looking fairly tidy now. Let me just read through it. So we're going to validate some stuff. Some of these validation functions probably need to be tweaked a little bit, rearranged. But okay, so we're going to validate. We're going to, and actually, do we use? I could just do that because that's only for validation that we use that. So we validate. Then we do a little more validation inline here. It's not extracted because the message depends on the current action being performed, so it's a little tricky to extract in a useful way. Then we're going to consolidate the balance of the caller and subtract the quantity from that. And then we're going to consolidate the balance of the target and add the quantity to that. So the end result should always be all balances for both the caller and the target are consolidated into the balance stored in the current height. And we're not making up any magic money here. So that looks good. One thing that would be super fun to stream later is, I think this is probably a little ways off because I think I can launch like a test contract without this, but doing generative testing of smart contracts I think is a really good idea to try to make sure there's no weird edge cases. So that would be something that I think would be a really good streaming topic, because it's something that's very common, or I shouldn't say very common, it's at least fairly well known in the Clojure community what generative testing is and how it works, or even the functional programming community. I don't know how much people in the smart contract space are doing this. I would hope a decent number of people are, but it's certainly something that wouldn't hurt for more people to be aware of and do. And so that would be a good streaming topic, I think. Okay, so let me think. Wrapping up here, what will we do next time? I guess it's really going to depend a lot on what I've done in the meantime, because this smart contract is my main focus currently. So I'll probably do a bunch of stuff before the next time. So maybe just like what is next in this. So I need to consolidate balances more places, I think. I should do that in the stake as well. So put the consolidation everywhere it needs to be. Stake and unstake is fine. I think I have a little magic number here. This should at least be extracted out into a constant. This is the how far in the future the tokens get unlocked, and it's basically 3 rounds of the three rounds of mining. The mining pool cycle is what I've done now. So I should at least put this in a constant that's not a magic number directly in the code. I think a better approach would actually be to put it into the contract so that this is where the parameter comes from. So you could, like, a setting people could change in the future. I probably won't go there right away because I just don't want to introduce more variables than I need to into this whole thing. But ultimately that would be a kind of cool place to get, so that in the future the community could vote on how long the pool cycles are. Freeze, unfreeze. So my thinking is on slashing my initial implementation of this for sort of like a test net is I'm just going to freeze people's tokens. So the way I'm thinking about the rollout is, okay, we have a test net. It's going to be live Arweave tokens. So you're going to be playing with actual rewards, but the pool tokens would eventually get, there would be some reward in future pool tokens, but the initial smart contract would evolve a bunch. We'd create a new one with a new token, and some people from the testnet would then get rewarded in the new pool. Got to flesh that out more, but that's kind of my mental model for how we roll this thing out publicly. So for that initial launch in a testnet or test pool kind of environment, I think all I want to do all I want to initially implement is just freezing tokens. So I won't destroy them. I'll just freeze them. And then if I need to, I'll implement slashing. But I'm hoping that early pool participants are not going to be stealing from the pool, and freezing should be sufficient, because I can always freeze as the contract owner and later slash if someone is foolish enough to participate, or not even slash. Like if I freeze it and they're just doing the wrong thing in like a testnet type environment, and it's like, well, okay, and whatever rewards that manifest in the future, you don't get those. So that's probably sufficient. And once I have that, so you have staking and you have freezing, I think you're pretty much set in terms of like the core functionality you need for doing a testnet. For a full non-test rollout, I want to have a lot of more community governance features. And those, I'm just going to do my own implementation, stealing from the original community XYZ contract. So I'll implement the same functionality, but probably rework it just a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of the path forward. I would think that by the next time I stream, I'll probably have a bunch of this implemented, and I may be just doing more testing on the stream. So we'll see. I think that's it for this time. Thanks for joining or listening later, and it's nice to get back at it again. It's been a while. So have a good one, and I'll